The following program is part 2 of 2 parts, each part an hour long. There is support material available at this website, including quizzes, handouts, and lecture outlines for all presentations. Consult the UCTV programming guide for the date and time that other lectures in the series will be shown.
The lifestyle of a ground squirrel is quite unique, and you need to understand that so that you can help people deal with the problems. Ground squirrels are hibernating animals, so in the winter most, but not all of them, will hibernate. In late winter, early spring, they will emerge from hibernation, and that's when they breed. They only breed once a year, average litter size of 5 or 6. So they breed, and then the young are born, and by late May or June, the young come out. So now you have all the males and females and all their babies in June running around like crazy. In July, when it starts to get hot, you'll get a summer estivation. Estivation is summer hibernation. And that's usually the males, and some of the adult females will hibernate in the summer. The babies won't. So you'll see these times when the squirrels seem to like disappear. Yeah, there's only half of as many. And that may not be that they've left the area or died off. It may just be that they're hibernating or estivating. They also are quite mobile and can move. Most of their feeding occurs within about 150 feet of their burrow. But they can move a greater distance. There's some reports of them going 1/4 of a mile to a barley field, for example. In the springtime, when they come out of hibernation, this is the vegetation food availability for them, and that's what they eat. And they have a genetic tendency to eat green vegetation in the spring. So we don't usually recommend baits, grain-based baits, in the spring because squirrels don't eat them very readily. Springtime is a time when you would use fumigation. When you fumigate, you want it to be good soil moisture, and also you could use traps. If you wanted to cut open a squirrel, you would find their stomach is full of grass. I do this for the afternoon programs. The gas cartridge is a smoke bomb. Again, another assignment for you or somebody in your class is to talk with the ag commissioner here in the county or the counties that you represent. Find out what the ag commissioners, what they will do with regard to rodents and rodent control. Some ag commissioners sell these gas cartridges to the public. They sell ground squirrel bait, rat bait, meadow vole bait to the public. Find that out for your county so you can refer people to the ag commissioner's office if they had, say, squirrels in their garden area. Because the gas cartridges they sell are superior, really, to any that you can buy commercially. They're basically a smoke bomb. If you're using that, you want good soil moisture because you want the soil to be tight and the gas to stay in the soil. Also, be careful about fire. I just got a call yesterday from an attorney in Chicago who's representing an insurance company. Somebody was fumigating with a rodent torch. Anybody hear about the rodent torch? It's a device that shoots propane and oxygen into the tunnel system, and then it has a little spark plug, so you hit the button and it blows up. I tell you, people are out there thinking of all these things. Well, turns out it's not really very effective. But it's a lot of fun. And so people are using it. Well, somebody was using it in Minnesota. They started a fire. They burned up 128 acres and 30 houses. That's an insurance problem. So you may not see the Rodex 4000 around very much longer. Okay, when the grasses dry and the seeds, the natural seeds from the annual plants are available, the ground squirrels will actually switch their diets to seeds. And since most of the poison baits that are used for squirrels are seed-based, that's when you would use them. When the babies come out from their burrows, they congregate around in little families. So this is a family of squirrels, and they'll stay like that. They'll congregate around the burrow opening for a few days, and then they'll start foraging and venturing out. They're quite cute. The main bait, if you're going to use a toxic bait in a garden area, is the anticoagulant bait. The anticoagulant, because the animals have to feed on it for a period of days, you usually put it in a bait station. So this is a 4-inch PVC pipe. You fill the bait here, and the squirrels come in from either end and can get the bait. A couple of words about anticoagulant bait. First of all, that it's toxic to most animals. So other animals, predatory birds, dogs, children, if they were to get into the bait, they would be affected by it. There's a margin of safety because they too would have to eat this bait over a period of days. So if you're using anticoagulants, just like the question, well, will the animals go outside to eat it? Some people will suggest, hey, these, there's no problems with these in your dog. There can be a problem if your dog gets into the bait. So if you're using a bait station, be sure to make it so that dogs can't get into it. Secondly, if your dog eats squirrels, and these squirrels are going to be a little bit sick and they'll be easier to catch. So maybe you see your dog chasing squirrels, but you don't ever really see him get one. Well, if you've done anticoagulant baiting, they might start getting some because the squirrels are slower. They're sick. And then the anticoagulant is in the tissue of the squirrel, and the dog, of course, would have to eat a number of squirrels. It's not very common, but it does happen. So you need to tell people, to read the label and make sure they follow the product label on how it's applied. Almost all of the problems that we come across, people were misapplying the pesticide, sprinkling the bait out instead of putting it in a bait station, putting it in a pan. And I've seen it all.
Is there a residual effect if you have it 1 week and you skip a week or two?
Okay, the question is there a residual effect? We used to say that you had to eat anticoagulant bait, and if you had a skip of 48 hours, you recovered. The anticoagulant baits are the same thing that you might be taking if you need some blood thinning, say if you have a heart problem, coumarin base. We've been doing some experiments in the lab because what we're trying to do is we're trying to reduce the amount of bait that is necessary or that's put out. And what we found is that 48-hour rule doesn't work. In fact, we found that we can, if we give squirrels bait on day 1 and then take it away and then come back 5 days later and give them another bait, that's the most effective feeding strategy. So there is residual. They do have to feed on it over a period of time. We don't fully understand that. But it doesn't have to be very much. It's not like they have to gorge themselves every day. And that's the problem with these bait stations, is they're giving the animals unlimited amount of bait. And they may have already eaten enough bait. So look down in the bait station and make sure it's not empty. Make sure that the bait where the squirrel's going in is good. This bait got all old and moldy. Now what happens when you put a bait station out in your, at your ranch or something? You think the squirrel's just going to go right in there and start eating that bait? No, because of neophobia. So sometimes a bait station can take a week or 2 weeks before the squirrels will even ever go in it. And then it's going to take 5 to 10 days before, once they start feeding on the bait, before they die. And then there's a whole social structure that can get set up where the dominant squirrels can guard their bait station. Hey, I found a food source that I'm not letting anybody get. And they will prevent the others from feeding at their bait station till they die. Then a new guy steps up. Now it's my food source. So it can take a long time to do a bait station. So you don't say, well, gee, I'm seeing a ground squirrel girdling my tree. I better put a bait station out. That's not going to work. You're too far down down the road on that one.
The reason I asked the question, we had a dog who got into some decon and was gone within 3 days.
Okay, excellent point. The question was, they had a dog, got into some decon, and gone in 3 or 4 days. All right, there's 2 points that I want to make here. First of all, the stuff that you buy over the counter at the hardware store is not the same stuff that you buy for ground squirrels. It's actually more toxic. It's the newer generation anticoagulants. One feeding of those is lethal. It's very hard on dogs. And what you had happen was your dog got into the bait, called a primary poisoning. And that's where most of the problems occur, because all of our dogs have been trained to eat dog food kibble and grain-based food. And that's what all these baits are. So you put some bait out. If your dog can get to it, they'll take, I'm sure my dog would eat 5 pounds of bait if she could get it. Because she will eat, it's just, that's how she is. And that dog would be done. So, good point. If you're using bait, first of all, the stuff you buy at the store, you don't use in the garden. It's not registered for the garden, and you don't. But also, any bait, you've got to make sure your animals can't get to it. Yes?
Example, you used one squirrel guarding the bait, and then another one moving in after that. Do they develop bait shyness from that? I mean, the others watching them die?
The question is, do they develop bait shyness when they see the others die? There doesn't appear to be much of that going on with rodents. We've even had multiple traps where you put 3 traps together and you can catch 3 squirrels. A lot of people say, well, if a squirrel's walking along and he sees that his buddy's in this trap dead, why would he go to the next trap? It's like a stall in a bathroom. I see a guy dead over there, well, I'll just go to the next one. But they do. So there is no bait shyness. There's at least none that we've found that they've associated, like, I saw that guy, I saw him protecting that, now he dropped dead. And then I saw his next guy protecting, now he's dead, now it's my turn, I'm not going to do it. I think they think, wow, I've been blessed, that my 2 competitors are gone. Yes? Okay, question, how do you dispose of the dead poisoned squirrel? Or we'll say dead poison any rodent. Okay, like with the squirrel, they have a big burrow, and if you can shove it down the burrow hole and bury it, that's fine. You're not doing anything that's going to scare the other squirrels away. You're just getting rid of the carcass. But if you have dogs in the area and that carcass will start to smell, they'll dig it up. So what I would do is take a garbage bag, double bag it, so you have 2, put it over your hand, reach down, grab the rodent, pull the bag like that, and then double tie it and put it in the trash. You don't want to touch these dead rodents with your bare hands. If you're going to touch them, use gloves. Wash carefully. The diseases are real and they're dangerous. So even for house mice, the little deer mouse, etc. Okay. Yes?
Is there a half-life or something on the medication in the dead animal that they won't be poisonous to another animal?
Okay, the question is there a half-life within the poisoned animal so that over time it won't be poisonous? When the animal's alive, yes, there is a half-life. That as an animal lives, it will detoxify that anticoagulant. And so the longer that animal lived, the less will be in it. Once it dies, that process stops, and now the half-life is going to be determined on the viability of the carcass. So over time, the carcass will wither and rot, and bugs will come in and eat it away. So I think it's basically when the carcass deteriorates and bacteria and bugs and things have eaten it up, then it's gone. I'm not trying to scare you about anticoagulants, because I think I do a lot of research on them. They're very good materials, but they're not, fail-safe, no problems. the same with strychnine. You know, we said strychnine you're putting underground for pocket gophers. So you say, well, that's good and that's safe. But once in a while, a gopher will die above ground, you know, for whatever reason, come above ground. And so a dog could get it. Or your dog may dig up a pocket gopher and then get one that has a mouthful of strychnine. So if people talk about strychnine and it's going to be in their yard, they say, well, do you have any dogs? Yes, I do. I would recommend you tie your dog up or keep them out of that yard for a week after you poisoned with strychnine. So that's the kind of thing that you can help people do. Right, the question is disposing traps. And I have to say with Hantavirus is this is a respiratory virus that is proving to be quite dangerous to people. It's running at about a 40% mortality. So far, there have been 35 cases of it in California. So it's not something that we all need to be leaving the state. Of course, it's in the other states too. But it is something that's quite serious. It's transmitted by the urine and feces of mice, particularly the deer mouse. The deer mouse is a mouse that's about the same size as a house mouse. It's found throughout California, throughout the country. And it isn't killed off by this virus. It's the host for it. And the way people get it, they think, is when you go, especially to mountain cabins that have been closed up for a while, that are infested with these mice, you go in there, you say, oh my God, the mice are going in, look at all this. So you start sweeping it up and cleaning up your cabin. It gets into an aerosol, you breathe it in, and now you have Hantavirus. This was the Four Corners virus. It started in the Four Corners states. The prevention for that is several-fold. First of all, it's mostly associated with cleaning up rodents. So if you go into a shed or a cabin or even your house that has a rodent infestation, you're not going to be able to tell, was this house mice or is this deer mice? So you should take the precautions. The precautions are, first of all, open up the area and air it out. Get that virus out of there if you can. Secondly, you take a solution of, I think it's 5% bleach and water, and spray down that whole area. You want to get it really nice and wet. The bleach will disinfect and kill the virus, and the water keeps the whole mess from being airborne. And then you clean it up by mopping it up. Don't sweep it and vacuum it, because that's going to put it all into the air. So that's the precaution for cleaning up rodent mess, is spray it down. You can also use a Lysol solution, but bleach and water, you just want to, it's mainly you want to get it wet and then clean it up. Take all of your cleaning tools or cleaning rags and things, put them in a plastic bag, throw them out, take your gloves off, wash your hands really well, and you can use a dust mask, but that's not, those dust masks don't filter out viruses, but they might help. Yes?
What is the danger of a cat killing a mouse that has this virus? What is the danger to the cat?
I don't know. I don't think, I think that Hantavirus seems to be pretty specific to humans, but I don't know for sure if cats can be involved. Plague, cats are quite susceptible to plague. And plague is mainly associated with ground squirrels.
Is that carried by the flea?
Plague is carried by the flea, yes. Trapping, this is a conibear trap. It's a kill trap. It's set in the burrow opening as the animal enters or exits. It will set it off. Some of you might remember Proposition 4, which banned body gripping traps. This trap would be banned under Proposition 4 if you were using it to take fur and sell it, fur trapping. It's not banned to do this kind of work for ground squirrels. Ground squirrels are not a protected species, and you can take them without a permit, without a license, if they're doing damage or threatening to damage your property. And you can use a body gripping trap like this.
Ground squirrels leave an earth
No, the ground squirrel mound is going to be from their burrow opening. It's just going to be spread out, and they can be pretty big or not so big. Okay, you really can't build anything to keep ground squirrels out. They're excellent climbers and excellent diggers. Predators do eat them, but they can't eat enough of them to keep the numbers low enough so they don't cause you damage. Pocket gopher is a subterranean animal. It lives underground virtually all of its life. The name is derived from these fur-lined pockets or pouches that it has, and it uses those to carry food and nesting material back to its nest. It, like all the rodents, has these paired incisor teeth that grow. Notice the lips close behind the teeth, so the gopher can actually use those teeth for chewing and digging. And then, of course, they have pretty sharp claws in the front. The pocket gopher makes its mounds by taking a lateral at approximately a 45-degree angle, pushing the dirt up. So you'll get these mounds that are what we call crescent-shaped mounds. There's a number 10 perfect crescent-shaped mound. There's the plug. That's the hole where this gopher was pushing the dirt out, and he's just pushed it like a bulldozer. The main point is they keep their systems closed up, plugged up. So unless you've happened upon a gopher that was just making that mound, it will be plugged up. They like the tap roots, any fleshy roots. They like, this is alfalfa tap roots. This is just to show you not all the mounds are the perfect 10s, but you can still see that's the plug. So a homework assignment, find some pocket gopher mounds, look and identify where the plug is. And once you see that, you know, you kind of get your mind and your eyes tuned up, they'll pop out at you all over. Some people, I never even noticed that, and then all of a sudden, whoa, I see that on every one. An irrigation system, the gophers caused so much percolation that we couldn't get water down to this end of the field, and the alfalfa is kind of dying off there. In an orchard, this is what you see, the gopher mounds. See, they're not really very descript, but what is that gopher eating in that orchard? The roots of that tree, right. And there's an example, also they'll do this girdling right on the tree there. That was the underground, yes, good question. We had these trees were planted on berms, and then this would, right there would have been the ground level, so right underground. A good question. Vines they'll take. You need to think about the potential problems that you might have if this was your backyard and you wanted to plant your garden. You might want to consider doing some pocket gopher control before you plant. With the pocket gophers, everything they do is underground. 70% of their diet is underground. They do a little bit of surface feeding where they'll come and just go straight up, and then they'll kind of eat around the hole. We call them a feed hole. And then they'll plug those up. So a lot of times you'll see these, there's no mound associated, just like a hole that's plugged up with dirt. That's pocket gopher feed holes. Sometimes those aren't plugged up, and you can get fooled and think that maybe it's meadow voles, but in fact it's pocket gophers, and they plugged it, but they didn't quite get the plug even with the surface. Yes?
On the prior picture, are they social, or how many gophers are there?
Good question. Pocket gophers are very territorial, one gopher per system, but they don't interconnect their systems, but they intertwine them. So each gopher in this area has probably 100 to 500 square feet is their area. So there's a lot of gophers out there. But it's hard for me to say, but you know, like this whole might be one gopher and this might be another one. It's hard, with that many, it's hard to say. But usually you can kind of see, if you've got a bunch of mounds over here and then over there there's another bunch, that's usually two. Okay, you need to find the tunnel system, and usually we use a probe, and the probe, when you reach the tunnel, it will kind of give a little bit. So the way that I tell people to find where they should start probing is go to one of those fresh mounds, put the plug right at your feet, so the mound's kind of opening in front of you. Back up about 8 to 10 inches and start probing. And that will help you find the tunnel. It's something that once you do it for a while, you can get better at it. Sometimes it can get very frustrating. You know it's down there, you just can't find it. Usually they're within 10 inches of the oil of the surface. If you're using bait, you can use strychnine bait. There are some anticoagulant baits registered for pocket gophers. Really read the label to make sure that you know what you're using, and ask people that are calling you. They say, well, I've got this pocket gopher bait and it doesn't seem to work. First thing you see, what bait is it? Well, it's Wilco bait. Okay. Do you have the label? What is it? Is it strychnine or is it anticoagulant? And then read to me how it says to apply it. Is that what you did? Usually you want to definitely put it underground. We like to use some kind of a funnel. So you're taking the bait. After you've made your probe hole, drop it down through the funnel, goes down through the probe hole into the tunnel. You put a dirt clod on that and you're done. The trapping is probably what most people will use in garden settings. The thing about trapping pocket gophers is they are solitary in their system. So once you find the tunnel, you dig it up, you usually have a tunnel going in both directions. Well, you don't know where the gopher is, so you have to put 2 traps, one going for this direction and one going for this direction. These are the Maccabee traps, one of the more common traps in California. The gopher has to come in over the jaws and hit that little pan, and those jaws will clamp around its body. If you're using trapping, you need 2 traps. You need to wire them to a stake so that you don't lose them. Because one of the things that we recommend you do is cover this hole once you've dug it. Because pocket gophers don't like light. They keep their system plugged. And if you don't plug it up, the gopher will very likely just fill up your traps with soil. In fact, a second homework assignment for you is to find a gopher mound, probe it, dig it open, and you've got the tunnel going in each direction, and then just walk away from it. Come back, sometimes just within a few hours, but at least the next day, and you will find that this entire hole that you dug will be full of the nicest potting soil that you could find. So you can try that. Here's another trap. This is a box trap. It works in a similar way, but the Maccabee you had to insert into the tunnel system once you found it. The box trap, you just kind of shave the tunnel system and it sits right up against it. Pocket gophers are pretty wary of traps, so trapping, you need to pay attention to what you're doing. Usually you would need one going in both directions, so the problem with these box traps is that it takes a lot of excavation to set one going in both directions. Agriculture, they use this burrow machine. It makes an artificial tunnel from that torpedo, and it drops strychnine bait in that tunnel. As that crosses over the ground of the pocket gopher systems, they explore it and find the bait. Fumigation is not recommended for pocket gophers, at least the smoke cartridge fumigation. The reason we think it doesn't work very well is that pocket gophers are very good at walling themselves off if they sense danger. And so when you do these smoke cartridges, they put a big push of smoke and heat, and we think the gophers will detect that and just push the dirt and close themselves off from that cartridge. So gas cartridges don't seem to be able to be effective. Some people have had pretty good luck with aluminum phosphide, which is a restricted use material. It's not something that homeowners are going to use, but you may run into it from some pest control operators, and people may call you and say, well, I was down in Southern California and my aunt has a company that comes in and they use these little pellets and they put them down the hole and they do great. Where can I buy those? Well, those are aluminum phosphide pellets. I think I have a picture of them yet. And what those do is when they contact moisture in the soil, they evolve phosphine gas, which is very toxic to the gophers. But it's a restricted use material. There have also been some deaths with this where people have used that near buildings. So it's gone underneath buildings and caused injury or death. So, you know, people, if people will, they come up with all kinds of things, some of them legal, some of them illegal. Before I forget it, one of the things that there are two things right now that are being promoted on the internet for pocket gophers, so you might run into them. One is the use of road flares. Light a flare and stick it down the hole. You know, I don't think it's going to work for pocket gophers because of the same reason that I said the gas cartridge wouldn't work. It might work for ground squirrels, but remember, if you haven't learned it yet, and I'm sure you will, you cannot use just anything as a pesticide. It has to be registered by EPA. Road flares do not have a registration for rodent control. So if somebody says, well, I heard about road flares, what you need to say is it's not legal to use road flares. They're not designed for rodent control. And they could be dangerous. And they're not registered, and you could get in big trouble for that. Okay. You meaning the person doing it. And you, if you recommend it. Another thing that's being recommended on the internet is the use of carbon monoxide from your auto exhaust. And this is not a new thing. You know, this has been around forever. It works. I mean, you know, people commit suicide doing that. So obviously it's going to work. What this device is it hooks to the exhaust pipe of your car, and then it has a little hose attachment, and you take the hose and you run it down the gopher burrow and start your car, and everything's happy. Everything's done. It may work. That is an illegal pesticide use. So you need to be careful about some of these home remedies that people concoct. If they are a pesticide, if they're intended to kill or to even repel, they need to be registered. And so if somebody said, well, I heard you could pour ammonium down a hole, or ammonia, or gasoline, or, you know, all of those things. No, you can't do that. And you'll run into that, I'm sure. Some of you may have even done some of that yourself. Exclusion, pocket gophers are excellent diggers. So we tried building a fence that was 3 feet deep. It had a 6-inch lip on the bottom of it to keep them out of alfalfa. We slowed them down, but we did not keep them out. Some gardeners have found that they can take the entire root ball of a tree and encase it in wire, or maybe even do a whole little garden plot like that. And that can be effective. It's very expensive and time-consuming. You've got issues of root growth and what that screen's going to do on that. And, but it can be effective to keep gophers out of an area.
Question?
Yes?
How tight of mesh?
The question is how tight of mesh. I would go with a 1/2-inch mesh. Probably you could get by with, no, I think a 1/2 inch. If you went 1 inch, if it was a young gopher, it would get through. And a meadow vole would get through a 1-inch mesh. Gophers don't like to dig in very rocky areas. I've read that 10% rock mixture will keep gophers from moving into an area. I don't know about that. This is a railroad bed. Oops. That gopher's burrowing up there. Now, whether he stays, I don't know, but I'm pretty sure that that whole area is pretty rocky. Lots of vibration when the trains go by. When I was a graduate student, I had an apartment about this close to the train track. And I can tell you it vibrates quite a lot when a train rumbles by. But I got used to it, and certainly the gophers did too. This is a gopher plant. There are no plants that we know of, that I know of at least, that you could plant that would keep gophers out of an area. There are some things that they don't like very much, but this gopher plant will not. You can't plant a row of them and say, well, that's going to keep the gophers on that side of my yard. They won't come across that. So I wish there were, and if you run into people that swear by a certain thing, let me know. We may be able to test it out. But Generally, when we get those into a laboratory controlled condition, we find that really there is no effect. Juicy fruit, oh, what's that?
How does the gopher plant work?
It doesn't work. How does it work? It's basically you can see right there, I broke there's a little latex. It's just a poisonous plant. And that was the idea, that, and maybe gophers won't eat the gopher plant, but they certainly won't leave an area because there's a gopher plant there.
I thought it was like the seeds that rattle in pods.
Right, no. I was going to tell you about juicy fruit gum, and this comes, you think this is funny, but there are some ranchers that bought, it was bazooka bubble gum at one time for ground squirrels. And there was a rancher that bought literally tons of bazooka bubble gum, spreading it out, thinking that was going to control ground squirrels. Well, juicy fruit gum was promoted as a control for pocket gophers. And the reason this stuff happens is because rodents don't have the ability to regurgitate. And so a lot of people, like I remember once a waitress was telling me that if rats drank Coca-Cola, they would blow up because of the carbon, and they weren't able to burp. And she told me she knew that because I'm in a restaurant one night, they had to close late, and they didn't bust the tables. And the rats came in and ate and drank some Cokes that were on the table, and they found them dead the next day. And I'm sitting in this restaurant like... So, anyhow, but that could be. But that is what happens. There's a recipe for rat cookies where you take plaster of Paris and you make it into cookie dough and feed it to the rats, because then it's going to solidify in their systems and block them up. Anyhow. Juicy fruit gum, I'm not sure what the physiological property of it was, but it was touted as controlling pocket gophers. And people were, take a piece and you roll it up and stick it down the hole. I mean, they'll do anything with these rodents sometimes. So we took in the lab, we had some pocket gophers, so we bought a bunch of juicy fruit gum. Had a little trouble getting that purchase order through the universities. It's for the gophers. And we found out that some gophers love juicy fruit gum. Not one of them was affected by it, but some of them did love it. So anytime you get anything that's going to mess up their feeding or cause them to stop feeding or get constipated, call me. If you think it's good, you call me, and I'll help you through it. They do like garlic. Gives them bad breath, but... And then there's the famous gopher probes or vibrating probes. Again, using my ship example, they will get used to that very quickly. You might be able to, we know, when you walk up to a pocket gopher system, we know that they'll go to their nest because they're feeling the vibration. So, there's something to that. As an ecologist, I might report how sensitive gophers are to vibration. Because I'll put a little radio collar on them, and then I can watch them as they're going underground. And I know every time I walk up, they go to their nest, because I know where their nest is. So then I can make a scientific paper out of this. And I write how sensitive gophers are to vibration, and then I look at some, survival theory that helped them survive because they could feel vibrations and were protected in their nest and blah. Okay, so then somebody sees that, they take it and say, aha, I'm going to build me a vibrating probe because I've got scientific proof that when vibrations occur, they run away. And so that's how this kind of stuff gets perpetuated. So it doesn't work. Don't bother. Question is, will gophers chew up an underground drip system? They will chew up underground drip systems. They will chew up underground wires. So if you take say a sprinkler control wire and you just bury it, it may be attacked and cut by pocket gophers.
You use PVC to encase it?
That would be an excellent way to deal with that. PVC pipe and then the tube or the wire inside the PVC. Oh, that's a devious question. Okay, the question, and this is a good one because, see, now you're getting into reality. This is what people want to know. There are a lot of people that have devised different electrocuting devices for birds and rodents. What we find is that most electrocuting devices, to be really effective, are so dangerous for people that you don't want them around. You know, if they're going to electrocute and kill gophers, if you got into it, it'd probably kill you too. So it's that hasn't proven to be a very effective. There are people that have built these hot wires and they figure pigeons are going to come down and land on it and zap them all. And you can kill some that way, but it doesn't usually work very well. Okay, and then with pocket gophers, they'd sometimes undermine buildings. Deer, cute, very cute. Deer, of course, eat a lot of things. This is a 4-year-old lemon tree that's doing pretty well. This is its neighbor tree, same age, been pruned by deer. Pretty much all the trees on one end of that orchard were hit by deer and we're probably never going to make it as a viable tree. The question is, what kind of fence? And I think there probably is at least one copy of the book Wildlife Pest Control Around Homes and Gardens in your library. If not, it's out of print. I'm trying to get it revised, but it's taking me longer than I had thought. There are some different fence designs, and if anybody's really interested in fence designs, I can give you some more information. The main thing about a fence to remember is the rodent, the rabbit, the deer, they're going to go under a fence before they go over it. So always, the most important thing about a fence is how it's attached to the ground. And then secondly, it's the physical ability of the animal. How high can they jump? This kind of fence is probably only 4 feet. Deer can go over that. Going to depend on what you're trying to protect, what's chasing them, etc.
I think ours have 9 strands.
Right. So he used the open fence, so just strands of wire, but 9, so probably 6 or 7 feet high. This was a very interesting case. This is George Lucas's ranch. It's called Skywalker Ranch in Marin County. This is actually not a home. This is the production office for Lucasfilms, or at least it was at that time. They probably expanded. But you can see that there's a pretty lush environment there with not as much around it. So pretty heavy deer population, not a lot of hunting pressure in Marin County. And the deer were really hammering this place. And in fact, when you looked at their camellias and roses and things, the deer just really knocked them dead. Their solution? Plant new plants. You know, if you've got enough money, that's how they actually had a gardener and a nursery growing, full-grown, blooming, whatever, so they could replace the ones that the deer had taken. The alternative that I was talking to them about was using an electric fence, which was based on the design that you talked about, which is just this is a high tensile strength wire, about, I think it's 8-inch spacing, but around 7 feet high. And of course, they were using electric, which even made it better. Just the kind of browsing pressure that some of you are probably familiar with up in this area. Other kinds of deer damage. That's my truck, or my old truck. I get into my work sometimes. But, you know, fences can be in all different kinds of varieties, but where it attaches to the ground is going to be very important. That's going to be the first way that an animal is going to get through that fence, is underneath it. And you'll see things like this, you know, just a little crawl hole. That's where they're going to get underneath it. Also, anytime you're dealing with water, or with uneven terrain, you've got to figure out how you're going to do that so that deer won't have, access, because they'll come right down the draw, down a creek, and that's how they'll get into your place. There are some different kind of unique designs that are used. This one is an example, but it's showing you kind of a concept that the deer are supposed to be on this side and your crop or garden is on that side. As the deer come in, what did I say? They're always going to try to go under a fence. They're going to have all this paraphernalia above them, and their perception is they can't jump. And also they're going to have a perception that that's a wide fence. Some people have found 2 fences 6 feet apart can be very effective, because even if the deer get over one, they can't get enough jump to get over the second. So different kinds of deer fences, and there are, like I said, if you really want deer fence information, I can probably give you some more specifics. Repellents, the main repellent that's been used for deer is called Deer Away, or BGR. Deer Away was developed by the Weyerhaeuser Company to protect seedling conifer trees. When they would replant these little trees, the deer would come along and munch them. And so they developed Deer Away, or BGR. BGR, big game repellent. And that is derived from rotten eggs. So you might have heard, and you've even heard, somebody was spraying their trees with rotten eggs to keep the deer away. And it does work. It's not foolproof. And it doesn't, the issues of water and rain and how hungry the deer are really key. If the deer are really hungry, you're not going to get them to be repelled by Deer Away, because Deer Away isn't poison to them. They can eat it, and they will eat it. That lemon orchard we tried Deer Away, it never stopped them a bit. That's another thing. If animals have established a feeding pattern, it's really hard to break it. So if you think deer are going to be in an area and you're going to use repellents, you need to put it on before they start feeding, not after. Yes? Okay, the question is, if you put a poisonous plant, do the deer know that it's poisonous? Animals devise that system of neophobia, and they use that to their advantage. So if they take a new plant that they've never had experience, they generally will only eat a little bit of it. If they get sick, they won't eat it again. That's that derivative of bait shyness. That's what it's all about. It's protection of them. So in general, they're not going to eat a poisonous plant and be killed by it. They may munch it a little bit, but probably not going to kill themselves on it. There are plants, and I submitted a grant to use the Master Gardeners to help us develop lists of deer-resistant plants, because there are a number of lists out there, but they're not really very good. And every time I give somebody a list, they come back and say, wait a minute, I planted that and the deer love it. And I had proposed to use Master Gardeners throughout the state to kind of, verify plants to see if in fact your experiences have been true, that they don't eat these or they do eat them. And then also hoping that with some that have the right kind of situation, we could plant certain plants and test if they're resistant or not. But they didn't. Deer Away usually has some kind of a coloration in it, a repellent, so you know that it's there. And there's also some work that have shown that if you do a visual, like there was a scientist that had an electric fence, and he found that it was more effective if he put little tabs of peanut butter on that fence, hanging every so often. And the idea was that he was trying to attract the deer into the fence. They'd kind of nose the peanut butter, get a big zap, and then they would go away. So there may be some benefit to having some visual cue to a repellent.
Does that work?
Not really. That's a good story. Another one that you're going to run into is human hair in a little bag, or lion dung, or coyote urine, or soap, or whatever. My feeling on those is the same that I've been kind of drilling into you. Yes, it might work for a little bit, but why would a deer worry about a bag of coyote crap? You know? It's not how animals operate. If an animal operated by every time they smelled something that was a predator or from a predator, they ran away, they would just be running all day long. That you have to put it in a different context. Ground squirrels, my favorite animal, they get eaten by hawks. No question about it. What does a ground squirrel do when it sees a hawk? Anybody have an idea? You say it goes underground. Anybody else? It stands up and looks around, and it calls a certain call that tells other squirrels, and I'm telling you the truth, there's an avian predator in the area. Everybody stand up and watch. I am not kidding you. That's what they do. They're very smart. They do get, if they spot the predator, they don't get taken by it. It's not that they all run down in their holes and quiver. It's just they're good. They have good sight. They live in open areas, and there's a hawk up there. Okay, I'm just going to watch it. And I'm going to chirp, and I'm going to tell the others in my colony, who are my family, there's a hawk up there, there's a hawk up there. They have a different call if it's a mammalian predator. And they can say it's I don't think they say if it's a coyote or a dog, but it's something coming to get us on the ground. And those are more dangerous because they could be hiding behind a little bush or something. So what's my point? My point is these predator odors and predator hair and all that, I think forget it. It doesn't make any biological sense that it's going to work. Moles, sometimes when people have a gopher, they might think it's a mole or vice versa. Do you have moles in this area? Okay, good for you. Moles are one of those more difficult animals to deal with. They're insectivores. They go around underground eating insects. They are very shallow tunnels. They don't eat bait, so it's hard to control them. They make their burrow mounds by pushing dirt almost straight up. So we talk about their mounds as being more volcano-shaped. They make these surface ridges that you can find in your lawn. And their mounds look more like that. So no, it doesn't have the clean look of a gopher mound. There's no real distinguishing plug. It tends to be more of just a pile of dirt out there. How do you deal with them? Not very easily. These are the two mole traps, the harpoon trap and the scissor trap. You basically have to set those down in the tunnel systems, and most people say that they're not very effective on those surface runs. You have to get down into the deeper ones. And people tell me, and I haven't done a lot of mole trapping, so I can't be too much of an expert on it, that if you go between two mounds, usually there'll be a deep tunnel between those, and that's the tunnel that you want to use. Okay, rabbits. These are jackrabbits, cottontails, a little bit different. They'll live, say, underneath this juniper. Nobody had to mow this lawn, which I'm going to get some rabbits in my house. Rabbit girdling will be about 12 inches off the ground. So that's another thing that you can, if somebody's got some girdling, where is it on the tree? Can help you. Some farmers have used even just plastic to keep rabbits out of an area. Probably a short-term kind of solution. Fencing, again, watch that underground part. Rabbits only need, jackrabbits, about a 3-foot fence. Cottontails even lower. But mainly they're going to go under that fence. My favorite problem with rabbits was at the Highway Patrol Academy. The rabbits got into the engines of these cars and would eat the spark plug wires off. And then they would get it, this was the patrolmen learning how to drive, so they'd run to their cars, high-speed chase, couldn't get it started. So if you're ever, you speed by a highway patrolman and you think, oh I'm going to get a ticket, and he can't get his car started, you could thank a rabbit for it. That's a Zon gun for birds. It makes a explosion that is to frighten birds away. It mostly irritates the neighbors. The birds learn to get used to it a lot faster than people do. You can do for birds individual protection, like this sunflower head. You know, people have tried to net a whole tree. It's hard to do. The birds, if they can, they'll get underneath the net. Now you have birds inside the net with your crop. So netting's not the easiest thing to do. Swallows and pigeons on buildings, netting, exclusion is the best method, really, or at least the most long-term. Yes?
Can you attract predators to an area like owls that might eat holes or go after different?
You can attract them. Barn owls, you can put barn owl boxes up, and often they'll be taken by the barn owls, and they'll raise animals, and they will eat rodents. So yes, you can attract them, and whether that will solve your problem or not is another question. We've talked about there are a variety of electronic noise makers, including some that produce distress calls. We've been working a lot on distress calls to drive crows out of roosts. Big problem in the valley, and it can be very effective if they're used properly. There's a little mall in Davis that has a terrible crow problem. They got our tape, they put it on, and they play it day and night. What do you think has happened? Completely ineffective. And then, of course, your tape doesn't work. Well, if you would have read the instructions, you would know that what you're doing is exactly the wrong thing. These kinds of things don't seem to work at all. I've seen birds sitting on top of these. Some people want to put some spines or cat claws or nixolite, different names, to try to keep birds from nesting. They can be somewhat effective, but what will happen is you'll get a few twigs and things in here, and pretty soon the birds will be sitting on top of them. They'll build their nest, and they have it nicely anchored. So that's it.
The preceding program was part 2 of 2 parts, each part an hour long. There is support material available at this website, including quizzes, handouts, and lecture outlines for all presentations. Consult the UCTV programming guide for the date and time that other lectures in the series will be shown.
It's the definitive guide to gardening, produced by the University of California. The California Master Gardener Handbook is available along with other gardening publications on the A&R Catalog website at anrcatalog.ucdavis.edu.